Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, and it's JJ Tales. JJ Tales. Actually, it's going to be DuckTales. Tucker has put together an amazing episode for you with DuckTales trivia, why I love the show. And if you've never seen an episode before, well, I think we might convince you to include some action and adventure in your life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
JJ Gordon, welcome to a very special trivia edition of JJ Meets World. You and I were talking earlier today via text going, hey man, we got to get an episode done before the weekend because we want to each enjoy our 4th of July at the lakes with brats and beers or whatever else you do. And I thought, well, here, just let me think of something for us to talk about today and we'll record it. And you were like, sweet. So you don't actually know what we're doing right now, right? You finding this out right now.
Nothing.
You don't know anything yet about what we're going to do.
Correct.
But I had no idea, right? Like I told you, I said, I'll come up with something, but I didn't know. I had no plan yet. And I only came up with my plan about an hour and a half ago and then worked hard on it. And I think I got it ready. So JJ, I came up with 8 trivia questions that I want to ask you.
Okay, I'm ready.
That are all about the same topic that you are an expert in. So you are uniquely qualified to do this. And I'm not trying to fill an entire hour with us asking these questions. I figured this would kickstart our conversation and then wherever we go from there, we go from there.
Got it.
But I've worked on 8 questions, all related to the hit animated television show DuckTales.
Love that.
And these are all DuckTales related questions. Some of them are going to be super simple, I'm sure, for a man of your tastes with DuckTales. But I think I aimed for a couple of them to hopefully be difficult. So we're going to see how JJ scores out of 8 questions. But before we get into this, though, JJ, before I ask the first trivia question, I have more of just a generic question. I have always associated DuckTales with you, right? Like we all have friends that are certain that we know, like, oh, my friend who does this, they're the biggest fan I know of XYZ. And so every time I think of Star Wars, I think of, Greg Carlson, because he's the biggest fan I know of Star Wars. Well, you are the biggest fan by an order of magnitude of people that I know over DuckTales.
Goodness. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you associate me with one of the pinnacles of afternoon animation.
Well, okay, so can you give us just a little backstory about what DuckTales means to you and how you even first came into contact with it?
Oh, I'd love to do that. Okay, so first and foremost, DuckTales is a spin-off of a comic strip that featured Uncle Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Donald. And so I was never a fan of the comic strip, not because I disliked it, but because I don't think that our paper actually carried the DuckTales strip for a long time. And I think it's called Uncle Scrooge is the name of the comic strip that goes along with it.
So Scrooge was the main character already.
Was the main character. He had actually, they changed the coloring on him because he used to have a red coat. And then in the animated series, they give him a blue coat instead.
Okay.
But he was around, it didn't delve deep into the backstory of so Huey, Dewey, and Louie call Scrooge Uncle Scrooge and Donald Uncle Donald.
Right.
Where their parents,
right.
Hopefully not being served with a delicious apricot chutney. So as a kid, we did not have cable television. And we had a VHS player pretty early on, which I thought was amazing. And I got as a gift a copy of 3 episodes of DuckTales on VHS tape. And I can tell you specifically which 3 episodes they are.
Okay.
Episode number 1 is where they go underneath the ground and they meet a series of people who live under the ground who are shaped like beanbags. And their defense mechanism is to turn into a ball and roll at you. And stuff that Scrooge is doing on the surface is causing them problems down there. So they're rolling around, essentially causing earthquakes to happen. And so Scrooge and the kids have to go and deal with that situation. Because the nice thing is about all these adventures that Scrooge goes on, inexplicably, his nephews are going to go on too and put them in mortal danger.
Right. I mean, he is a loving, protective custodian.
That's absolutely correct. The second episode on that is one that actually, I don't know the dates of when X-Men introduced like the giant robots.
Gotcha.
But
that was the very first episode of the X-Men.
Of the animated series, that's where they came from?
Yeah, well, no. Are you saying in general or just in the cartoon?
No, in general. Like,
oh, my apologies. The Sentinels came in way back in the comics before they arrived in the cartoon, but they were in the very first episode of the cartoon.
So it's essentially like Gyro, which is the name of the inventor duck that Scrooge has, who lives like in a shack. It's like almost like he keeps him prisoner. But he invents essentially these sentinels, and they end up playing hockey on the streets. They're supposed to be giant construction robots. So like their arms are made up of cranes, and then their hands are kind of like dig out hooks. And so the Beagle Boys, which is it's genius how they incorporated the Beagle Boys into this. It's a family of criminals, and then their mother, who's voiced by, I believe, June Foray. And she loves her boys, and she's constantly breaking them out of jail. And there are like 70 Beagle Boys. So there's a Beagle Boy for all occasions, and some that make more appearances than others. Like one of them is kind of this fat, dumb beagle who eats all the time, and so he's taking a bite out of his prison number plate. Then there's like a big brawny one, who's like, come on, Ma, we'll get this taken care of. And then like Burger Beagle, that's the name of the one who eats all the time, Burger. And then there's Big Time, which is a little tiny guy. It's hilarious. And so the Beagles get a hold of these construction machines, and what they ultimately are trying to do is steal all the money from the money bin. And I believe they do it in an ingenious way where they flood the money bin, and all the money ends up at the bottom of this lake. They freeze the lake and then helicopter it to somewhere else.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah. The Beagle Boys have some brilliant plans. And the last episode that was on this 3-parter that we had was one with Magica Dispel, which is, in an interesting way, like Scrooge's like number one enemy. And what she wants is Scrooge has a dime. It's the first dime he ever made, and he considers it a good luck charm. Magica considers it to be magical. And so she's always after Scrooge's number one dime. And so in this, she's trying to steal it by turning into a raven and coming to Scrooge's mansion. So I watched this tape over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and I loved it, and it was so much fun. And then I started playing DuckTales on the NES, which is without a doubt one of the greatest video games of all time. I'm actually staring at a cartridge of it right now that I have in a shadow box. It is just, the game is great. The music is out of this world. The music is so good that bands actually cover some of the songs. It's very popular to cover like the Moon theme from this. And in that, Scrooge is, of course, trying to reclaim gold and diamonds and jewels from across the globe, while also fighting. Like he fights one of those like pillow sack monsters at one point during this thing. The music is, again, so good that when they remastered the game for the PlayStation 3 or 4, they had somebody come in and essentially like do an up version of the music, and I've got it on my phone. They're my ringtones. The music is just so awesome from this video game. It's amazing. And then I've got a special place in my heart for DuckTales, The Treasure of the Lost Lamp.
Okay.
So once a year, my mom and my Aunt Ginny would get together, and turn cucumbers into pickles. Now, Tucker, hold back your vomiting because I know you're not a pickle fan.
Yeah.
But it was this thing where they would go out and they would buy thousands of pickling cucumbers. And then the kid's job would be to sit on the porch with a hose and little scrubbers and scrub every single one of these pickles so that they could be packed into jars and then filled with a brine and processed and pickled and canned.
Okay.
It was an annual thing, and it was like it was an army of kids out there working nonstop. And our reward one year in particular was we got to go see DuckTales, The Treasure of the Lost Lamp. My mom and Ginny just essentially took 10 of us kids and said, like, here you go, and we'll get you popcorn and pop. And for a guy who loves movies as much as I do, my parents really never took me to movies. Movies were very rare. In fact, I can remember seeing only 2 movies with my dad in the theater. One was Hook, where we had to leave halfway through because my sister got food poisoning from an Italian place in Moorhead. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I can't speak of it. It's not very easy for me to say. And the other time was he and my mom were fighting and he needed to get out of the house and spend time with me. So we went to Grumpier Old Men. And it's funny
apropos,
because later on, my mom started going to more movies with me when I was, an adult, when I was in my 20s, because she knew how much I loved that. And I think my mom got a kick out of watching me enjoy something like the movies. Like I remember she and I went to go see The Incredibles over Thanksgiving weekend when we were in Phoenix for my cousin's wedding. And she's like, I love to see movies, or I love to see this through your eyes. And so like, I was like, oh, I'm so happy that I can make that happen for you. I'm glad. And so we went and saw that movie and I love the movie. In fact, talk about movie adaptations. I don't think that there are many small screen to big screen adaptations that have nailed it better than DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp.
Wow,
like, it's amazing.
That's a ringing endorsement.
It really is. And as I get older and I'm able to read more about DuckTales, I realize like, oh my God, the guy who's Wilbur in Mr. Ed is the voice of Scrooge McDuck. What? And so, you just learn all these things as you get older and older. And I had more of an appreciation. I had that movie on VHS, and for a long time, it wasn't released in a high def format. So it hadn't been released on DVD. And then when it finally was released on DVD, you had to be a member of the Disney Movie Club and get a movie every month to be able to get a hold of it. So it was really rare for people to have it. So I saw it one day at a pawn shop and I'm like, oh my God, this DVD is like $150 on eBay and these fools are selling it for 2 for $5.
Nice.
And so I picked that up. And ever since then, I've had like a real soft spot in my heart. And they've rebooted the show, which has been a lot of fun. And at first, I did not care for the rebooted DuckTales. And it took a little while for me to get into what the new stuff is, mainly because it was a lot of fan service, but in ways that I didn't like.
Okay.
And then it became really good because I'm like, oh, I see what they're trying to do here. This is genius. And so I did end up getting into it, and I thought the series was genius. And clearly it was made by people who absolutely love DuckTales, because they did some stuff in there that, like, even today blows my mind that they considered. So for example, the moon theme I was talking about, they flesh out the idea of Huey, Dewey, and Louie's mother, and she was a fellow adventurer, Della Duck, and she has to calm down this alien, and so she sings a song, and it's to the tune of the moon song, and like my heart melted when that happened. It was just great, just wonderful. So my story with DuckTales kind of goes like that. Also, I consider myself like an amalgam of a lot of characters from DuckTales. And like, for example, in my own personal life, my buddy Phil Lund is Launchpad.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean to mess up, but always does. Yep. Is a ton of fun, is always up for an adventure. I dig that. And then like Doofus Duck, who is like the Huey, Dewey, and Louie's friend, who's also part of their junior woodchuck, like their version of Boy Scouts. He like who's always eating, and he's always like, "Hey, Doug." I've always kind of considered myself a little bit like Doofus.
Well, like I believe this strongly. If you look at Doofus Duck, he looks like someone was given the direction of make JJ as a duck.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Right. Like the way they master that double chin on that guy.
The personality is completely different, but it's just the look of the drawing of him. It's like that looks like they made JJ as a duck.
If I had webbed feet, it would have just been perfect. So there's a lot of stuff that I've really enjoyed over the years when it comes to DuckTales, and I'm a huge fan. And now that I know that we're going to be doing DuckTales trivia, I'm very, very excited. I'm ready to take on this challenge. And Tucker, was DuckTales a part of your life at all?
I liked DuckTales. I knew of it. I'd seen some of it, but I was more into Darkwing Duck when that came out.
Well, that's part of the Duckiverse.
Well, except not according to the creator of Darkwing Duck. Yeah, that was good. That was gonna be a trivia question, but I decided not to put it on there because
it's arguable because he contradicts himself in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so the new DuckTales has definitively answered that question. Did you know that?
No, what did they say that they're part of the same universe?
Yeah, so Darkwing Duck was a part of the new show, and what it was is Darkwing Duck was a famous superhero in like a comic that Huey, Dewey, and Louie read, and so like think of him as like Batman for us.
But does that mean that the old show was just the comic they were reading, but not because they're in it?
Right, that's exactly what it is. Because in this, the guy who plays Darkwing Duck essentially like is making a new Darkwing Duck movie. And so you can assume that all of his adventures and all those villains were fictional creations that these guys were, Huey, Dewey, and Louie were watching Darkwing Duck the same way we were watching Darkwing Duck.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Oh,
and Tailspin is also a part of this shared universe.
Right, because Tailspin, and I would assume Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, actually, because it came out after the same block of programming, too, because of the success of DuckTales.
Okay, I'm going to be controversial. I don't think that Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers is a part of this universe.
But isn't it a part of Tailspin?
No. So in Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, because that's the only thing where there's actual human beings. So in Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, they live in a human being world versus all these other ones, Tailspin, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck. They all live in a world populated by animal humanoids.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
Also, Tucker, did you Google Doofus DuckTales?
Have I Googled it today?
Well, no. I mean, when you look at that image, actually do this. Google Doofus DuckTales, and then on the third, and then hit images. And on mine, it's the third one down. Someone's done like an artistic rendering of Doofus. That's Doofus just his head.
Doofus Drake. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to make that my new background image.
You'd need to. You need to make that your profile image.
Yeah. I feel like if you used a soft lens on a camera, like you could believe that that's me. In fact, why have I not gone as Doofus for Halloween?
Yeah. Well, hey, there you go. I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult. It's mostly the hat and then the ascot and a blue shirt.
Yeah. Well, and some blue horn-rimmed glasses.
Yep.
And no pants.
Right. His are not horn-rimmed, though. They're just circular. They're just thick.
Just nice, thick glasses.
Nice, thick glasses. Well, JJ, I'm a little disappointed because you've basically answered at least 3 of these 8 questions in your recounting of how much. But that's fine. That's okay. Because clearly that means that you're the right person to ask these questions too, right? You're that steeped in it. So we're going to just get through these 8 then, since I don't think this is going to take long for you to answer any of these. And a couple of them you've basically already answered. So this first one, most of these should be easy for you. What was Gizmo Duck's real name?
Gizmo Duck was Fenton Crackshell.
Correct. I did not know that. I knew Gizmo, but I couldn't remember his regular name.
Do you remember the words that it took to get him inside Gizmo Duck's inside the suit?
No, what is it?
Blather and blatherskite. And there's an episode where his mom says it, and she ends up getting inside the Gizmo Duck outfit.
And isn't he the accountant of Scrooge?
Yeah. So he's Scrooge's accountant and like kind of hapless, like secretary slash, assistant in a way. Scrooge does not care for him very much, but once he becomes aligned with the Gizmo Duck suit, it becomes like a really big deal. Like his character's really good. And like he lives with his mom who smoked. That's how old this cartoon is. She smoked.
Now, because wasn't Gizmo in Darkwing Duck?
That's correct.
Right,
and so the creator of Darkwing Duck, I don't know why he's all up in arms about this, because literally even the guy who voices Darkwing Duck says, well, of course, Launchpad McQuack is a character in both of these things.
Exactly. Okay, well, this next one you've already answered. Which one of Scrooge McDuck's possessions was Magica De Spell obsessed with stealing?
Oh, his number one dime.
His number one dime. Okay, on to question number 3. Which character on the show was voiced by Russi Taylor?
By Russi Taylor. Should I know Russi Taylor from something else?
I figured you would know Russi Taylor from DuckTales.
Oh. Okay. It is not Scrooge because that is Alan Young. Russi Taylor. That sounds like a female name to me. I'm going to guess it's Ma Beagle.
Nope.
Oh,
it's
no.
actually a trick question. Russi Taylor played Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Oh,
and also Webby Vanderquack.
Okay.
So they do get hard, and there are ones you're going to miss.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
I'm glad.
And you know what? I should have just said Mrs. Beakley from the get-go because she's the other main female character. But
Right. Okay, sweet. Awesome. So right now, you're 2 out of 3. Excellent. You're not going to get a full. I'm happy now, at least. That there's some challenge.
Yeah, they're right. I'm not going to sweep these.
But here's another easy one for you. What is the name of the second richest duck in DuckTales?
That would be Flintheart Glumgold.
Yeah, I was really surprised to read about his origins and about how basically they had to kind of retcon him a little bit because he was from like South Africa at a time when apartheid was happening. Maybe you don't have your cartoon character view from that.
Side note, when they did the revamp of DuckTales for like the new series that came out the last couple of years on Disney XD, he without a doubt is the best updated character. Not only did they update his design, and I absolutely love it because he like Scrooge is kind of like is a rather thin duck, and they make Flintheart like very squat, like he's got no neck and just he's got a big beard of feathers. But in the very first episode of the reboot series, Donald has to work for Glumgold Industries. And he has to sit and watch this like training video. And it's, I'm Flintheart Glumgold. We're so glad you're going to be part of the team. And it is the most like anyone who's ever seen one of those craptastic employee videos, they do it so perfectly. He's like, let's talk about eye wash stations. And the idea that the CEO and the second richest duck in Duckburg would be doing his own corporate videos, that really tickled my fancy.
I love the name. Flintheart Glomgold is a great name. Question number 5. What year was DuckTales the video game released for the NES and Game Boy?
Okay. It came out the same year for both?
Yes.
Okay, so let's figure this out. I know that I had a Game Boy, but I don't believe that I had a Game Boy right off the bat. So I'm going to have to guess. And I was young when I played this game. I'm going to guess 19... I'm gonna say 89. It's 1989.
Correct, 1989.
Oh, thank God. Oh God. I can't tell you. I was ready to say 1990 and just throw that one out there and be done with it.
Nope, 1989. Correct.
See, every now and then I get one of these.
Number 6.
Also, side note, you'll appreciate this. So DuckTales is a Capcom game.
Yeah.
And the main team who worked on Mega Man worked on DuckTales. which is one of the reasons I think I like the play style so much, because it is very much like a Mega Man game.
Right, very much so. All right, next question. Which important member of the Duck family was never seen in animation until the 2017 reboot? You've partially answered this. You've answered this question.
It's the Huey, Dewey, and Louie's mom. I'm going to assume Della Duck.
Yep. Della Duck, also I guess referred to as Dumbella Duck back in the strip.
Yep.
Because she's from my research, the first mention of her is from the very first strip of these characters, where she's written a note to her brother Donald, or cousin Donald at the time, and then later they made them siblings, and saying, please take my children in with you.
Side note, so the Della that they created for the reboot is really attractive. Like, I've got a real crush on her, in the same way I've got a crush on Gadget Mouse.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers. And I think it's because she's incredibly smart. She, she knows what she's doing. She's very assertive, very independent. And yeah, I'm attracted to both a duck and a mouse.
I think you've got a thing for aviator goggles.
That is exactly what it is. Oh my God, Tucker. That is nuts. Because I also have a thing for Amelia Earhart.
Yep, they're both in like flight suits, basically, with aviator goggles. So that are sitting on their head.
This is blowing my mind.
Do you know what? You're gonna have to get Jill a gift for her.
I'm gonna have to get here. Put these on. Just pop these aviator goggles on. Get this flight suit. I'm gonna start a fan that's blowing in the background. Now, here's the thing. So you would think that I would be intimidated, or at least I'd identify with Launchpad then, because he seems to be the easy, like, if either of these female characters were going to fall in love with someone in the DuckTales universe, it would be Launchpad.
So you're saying that your fantasies should include you being him?
I mean, I've always wanted to wear a long, like, white silk scarf. And that's part of Launchpad's go-to. Okay.
Last two questions. First one's going to be super easy, but I had to figure this one out.
I'm sweating.
Match Huey, Dewey, and Louie with their colors.
Okay. Huey, Dewey, and Louie. If I am matching them with their colors, I think, and let's go like this one at a time. Louie is green. Yes?
I'm not saying anything until you go through all three.
Louie is green. Huey is blue. Dewey's red. On all of them?
On two of them.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Incorrect. Yeah, so Huey is in red, Dewey is in blue, and Louie is in... And there's actually an explanation for it that I had read, that I think it's something of... red is the brightest of the hues, so Huey is red. Blue is the color of dew, so Dewey is blue, and that leaves green for Louie, and leaves are green.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that one might be a stretch. That might be one of JJ's classic. And speaking of...
I mean, that is exactly the explanation that I read on the Wikipedia page for Huey, Dewey, and Louie. That one of the writers or something had come up with. So that's not me just coming up with like my own system.
Okay, I will say this. One of the big problems with the reboot of this series is they tried to make Huey, Dewey, and Louie each completely independent, separate characters. And I didn't care for that. I almost want them to be interchangeable.
Do they look physically different besides their colors?
They do.
Oh yeah, that's
they've got a different like kind of hairstyle. I mean, they are not interchangeable.
How are they supposed to do like ones where they swap out for each other as like a gag or a strategy?
That's what I'm saying, man.
That's silly. I'm looking through. There's only one question left, and you've got two of these wrong. Yeah. Damn. But I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't have gotten even close on either of them. I would have had all these wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay. Well, hey, one last question. And this one tickled me. This was my favorite piece of DuckTales related trivia that I was able to find.
Okay.
On a few occasions in print, artists would erroneously draw 4 nephews instead of 3, and the error would still get published. Disney comic editor Bob Foster came up with a name for the 4th duck. What is it?
Oh my God. Okay. So there's a fourth duck, and I assume it follows the Huey, Dewey, and Louie rhyming scheme in there. Stewie?
That's a great guess, and you're right. It does follow it, and I wouldn't expect you to have.
It's not something that's like anti-Semitic, is it?
No.
Okay,
No. It's Phooey duck. Phooey duck. And so Phooey duck technically doesn't exist, except that he's been accidentally drawn in a few issues or whatever that have been published. And then at one point, I actually believe when I'd read that some comic strip somewhere had actually made him a character who like pops in and out of existence from time to time. He's like this fourth sibling of the brothers. So you could say that they're sort of a secret. They're actually quadruplets.
Okay, so let me throw some other trivia at you that I think you might enjoy. Okay, so the butler of McDuck Manor, his name is Duckworth, but he's a dog.
Okay.
And that I think is messed up. I think at one point they had included this character Duckworth, or they had mentioned it, and then no one really went back and said,
"Oh, I see what you're saying. That he's not a duck, but he has duck in his name."
Yeah, right. It'd be like if I said, "Oh, this is my dog. It's a cat." And not that everyone has to be a duck in this universe, but usually when their name involves the word duck, you would think that they are a duck.
Oh no, he died before the 2017 series?
Who? The guy who voiced Duckworth?
Duckworth, according to Wikipedia.
So there's a weird thing where they kind of included like a Duckworth, but they really didn't. Like it was a guy who was applying for a job. And so if you read like a bunch of the fan sites, they'll tell you that they think that they were supposed to include it. By the way, it should be noted, the reboot series has ended. It ended this last spring, aired the final episode, but there's still plenty of good stuff that you can go to watch. And it's got a very wry 21st century type of humor that's good. Some of my favorite side characters include the cave duck that they find, Bubba, who was this ultra strong cave duck from the prehistoric era. And he had a little tiny, furry onesie that he wore, and he had a big club, and Bubba loves Scrooge. And then at one point, Scrooge tells him Scrooge doesn't love Bubba.
Aww.
And he has to leave, and it, honest to God, will still get a tear from my eye. It is so sad watching the episode where Bubba gets kind of pushed out of the house. Oh my God, it's awful.
Is there any reconciliation? I mean, does Scrooge does it get better?
It does. Scrooge realizes he made a mistake. Essentially, they took that same exact premise for the Dennis the Menace movie a couple years later. So Scrooge has like a girlfriend that was a big part of his life for a long time. And whoever wrote this character in there picked the perfect name. Her name is Goldie. And so, of course, Scrooge McDuck would fall in love with a woman named Goldie.
Of course.
Yeah, I can't get enough of something like that. I think it's so dang good.
I sent you a photo on Facebook.
I did. I see that photo you sent me. You're trying to tempt me with some cosplay.
Well, all you need to, so here's what you need to actually get for Jill is there's got to be the full wig and goggles and ears as like a piece.
Mm-hmm.
That must exist somewhere. Got to get that for Jill.
See, okay.
And then find out what she wants you to wear.
Now, can I throw this out there?
I've sent JJ a photo of Gizmo being cosplayed. Gadget.
I don't know if it's if I'm as attracted to a human being dressing up as a mouse as I am as a mouse who just happens to be wearing human clothes. I know that could be difficult to understand, but it's just the way it is. Yeah. Okay, so I also want to throw out a couple of things too that I think are important when it comes to DuckTales, which is DuckTales had reoccurring villains like the Beagle Boys, but they also had some other like great one-off villains. Like there's a 3-part series where there's a character who is like very asthmatic and and he's this really old dog, and he's also a treasure hunter. And so he and Scrooge, in fact, he is in the opening credits to DuckTales when Scrooge and this guy are there's a pit falling underneath them, like these blocks of stone are falling underneath them, and they both run to like grab the edge of a cliff. And that 3-parter was always really great. I enjoyed that. Any of the Magica episodes are great. There's ones with ghosts. I mean, it's just such a smart. And then the theme song to DuckTales is one of the best television theme songs of all time. And there's a reason for that. It's because it was written to be perfect. Just perfect.
What do you mean? Like they were like, make sure it's perfect.
They're like, make sure that it evokes a sense of adventure. Make sure that it's got a beat behind it. Make sure that you've got someone singing it who's gonna like this. And the Growing Pains themes are two things that, quite frankly, if they popped up on a jukebox, I'd drop a quarter or two.
Right.
And they also live in a town called Duckburg. It would be like if you and I lived in Manville. So it's just I'm a huge fan.
With Gyro, does Gyro work for Scrooge?
He does. He's like essentially Scrooge's R&D team.
That's what I figured. I figured that he was basically making patents for Scrooge, and that was a large part of Scrooge's wealth was in what he owned. So, which makes me think that Gyro must also be wealthy in some way.
No, he's not. He's not
really.
Yeah, no, he is. He is
Scrooge
the dude,
is that miserly that he's not going to pay him well.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of Scrooge, right? Like even when Scrooge is like paying his butler, he has to pull out like a penny, like a little coin wallet, and pay like to the exact dime. Scrooge is very much a penny pincher. This is also a thing I want to throw your way. Remember when we were talking about Alf Clausen a few episodes back and about his work on The Simpsons? He was also one of the composers on the Chippendales Rescue Rangers theme.
Okay, nice.
So we got to get this guy on the show.
Absolutely, if he'll talk.
And he's got a great roots right here. And it's ready to go. So let me ask you this question, Tucker.
Okay.
The Disney Afternoon was a series of shows that you got to watch that included Goof Troop, Tailspin, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, and Gummy Bears.
Gummy Bears is part of that?
Yeah, Gummy Bears is technically thought of as part of the Disney Afternoon. It's
no way.
Yeah, because they moved it from Saturday mornings to the Disney Afternoon setup. And to me, I think that's a great idea because Gummy Bears is another one of those shows. These shows were so well animated in a time when everything was being sent off to the cheapest like possible country where you could get someone to draw hand-drawn animation, and they use the same cells over and over and over again. To me, I am so incredibly impressed at the hard work that went into making DuckTales, which still stands up today in quality. I'm a huge fan. And then they've also started, so it had its comic beginning in a comic strip, and now they've actually put out some graphic novels and pieces that allow, more of the backstory of DuckTales to be told. I don't think we've seen the end of where we're going to go with this story. And of course, they got, is one of the doctors from Doctor Who. It was a big deal when he came on to voice Scrooge McDuck. Oh, shoot. David Tennant. Tennant was the guy who voices Scrooge in this new one, and I like it. They did try and make him a little too mean and kind of reclusey, but
he's not as like warm-hearted as he was in the original cartoon, because he was still, even though he was miserly, he cared about his nephews,
right?
And he would really save the day. He knew how to save the day if need be.
Christopher Lloyd also did a voice in Treasure of the Lost Lamp. He was the main villain.
Okay, so let's say you were to actually cast a live action DuckTales, and let's assume that it's something where you're actually using humans to just portray the characters without them being in full anthropomorphic suits, right? So you would like put someone in the Scrooge McDuck costume, but he wouldn't be a duck. If you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So
In fact,
who would you put in your DuckTales movie if you did that?
So Sean Myrie, our friend Sean, and I have talked about this at like extensive lengths. So for a long time, it was going to be Richard Attenborough.
Ooh, okay.
But he's dead now, so that's impossible. So when I think to myself, like, okay, who embodies Scrooge McDuck? Because he's got to be a smaller, I mean, Scottish would be great, but an older man. I think you've got to go to like the Game of Thrones cast and start saying like, okay, who could you pick from Game of Thrones? For example, like, who is the guy who played like the eunuch in that? You know what I'm talking about?
A Grey Worm?
Yeah, he would be a great doofus.
What?
Are we talking about the same guy, right? No,
I don't think so.
No. I'm talking about the guy at the beginning, like the guy. Yeah.
The spider. Yeah. I know what you're talking about now. I thought you were talking about
not the guy who is castrated during the show. But
not the Unsullied is what I thought you were talking about. Was one of the Unsullied who are also. There's a lot of castrated characters in Game of Thrones.
Now that I'm thinking about it, there really are. What's the deal?
I was going to suggest Ian Holm, but he passed away last year, so we actually wouldn't even be able to put him.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to work from Scrooge down, and we're already at a standstill of who would fit in that particular role. I mean, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, I think you have the same person and they play all three parts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe it's Deep Roy.
You think Deep Roy?
No, it's not. It's not Deep Roy.
I can tell you this much: Mrs. Beakley is Melissa McCarthy, without a doubt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so we can start there. There's building blocks here. There's absolutely going to be a Scrooge McDuck out there, and maybe you have to go a little against obvious type. Like they have to be able to evoke Scrooge McDuck, and who would make an amazing Scrooge McDuck? Who would do an amazing Scrooge McDuck impression?
I think that there's plenty of billionaires out there who look up to Scrooge McDuck and they're like, I embody, like Richard Branson is probably looking at Scrooge McDuck and being like, yeah, man, I know what it's like. Heavy is the head.
I'm trying to think of what did anything else come out of the DuckTales series? Like any other connections to it. I'm looking at this and it's at the opening for DuckTales and it says the series is notable for being the first Disney cartoon produced for weekly syndication, with its success paving the way for future cartoons such as Chip and Dale, Rescue Rangers, and Tailspin. And that was what made me think they must all be part of the same shared universe. But then at the same time, all of Disney properties in some way are like in the same multiverse now. I mean, basically Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers shares a multiverse with Spider-Man No Way Home. Effectively, because they're all
blowing my mind to think about. I mean, you're absolutely correct. And we're going to see that with Space Jam, right? I know that we're talking about Disney, but in Space Jam, we are going to see a world where anything that Warner Brothers owns is up for grabs. So there's going to be Matrix parodies and there's going to be all of this stuff. And so to me, I loved the idea of a shared universe when no one had really done it. And now it drives me nuts because it's such a crutch.
Well, there's no end in sight. Pretty soon it's going to be a company that owns multiple multiverses. I mean, at some point, I think in our lifetime that at some point, both DC and Marvel Comics characters will be owned by the same parent company at some point. The continuation of consolidation of intellectual property is just going to keep going. And, there's no there's no sense that like a whole new comic book company of superheroes is going to pop up to suddenly challenge the popularity of those two as well. So it's always going to be those two. And at some point, whatever parent company of one is going to buy the parent company of another one, and you'll have the same company owning Batman and Captain America at the same time, and they're going to fuse those worlds together. So it's going to be more and more and more of the how many times can we wring blood out of this rock?
Oh, there's so many more. That there are, and like that's my problem, right? Is that it's it's more about coulda instead of about shoulda.
Well, I didn't realize this, that Ally McBeal shared a universe with Boston Legal.
Oh, really? And
Because they were both
Boston Public follow that same thing where Boston Public was a part of it?
Or maybe it was Boston Public, and I'm just getting the wrong one here. Because earlier today I went down a YouTube a rabbit hole about that dancing baby.
Yeah,
remember that thing? And so then I started reading
about that dancing baby.
Really? Why? Why did that come up for you?
So I was talking about the first things that you massively sent out in emails, and I remember essentially what was like one of the first gifts of the internet was that dancing baby.
It was The Practice. I'm sorry, Crossovers with The Practice. That was the show that existed in the same shared universe as Ally McBeal. My apologies.
I call it Ally McSqueal.
Why?
Because I think it'd be funny if they were all pigs. It's the same problem, but they're pigs.
Was she already married to Han Solo at this point? I don't
believe so. And really, in all honesty, what have you seen Callista Flockhart do since then?
I mean, probably nothing, but if that means that she's just retired, that's good for her. I'm just wondering. I'm looking at her Wikipedia page right now, and the last TV series looks like she did was Brothers and Sisters in 2006. So who knows, dude? Maybe she's just like, hey, listen, she's done a few other appearances in television. Oh, that's right. She was in Supergirl. She was a recurring character in Supergirl.
She's like, you guys, my husband is one bad shoulder injury away from death.
How many times is he going to crash airplanes? like I don't know how many of those he has left.
Yeah, we're talking about Harrison Ford, by the way. Anyone who doesn't know, Callista Flockhart.
Do you think Han Solo, he was watching, he was just watching Ally McBeal and was like, I'm Han Solo. I could probably just reach out to her.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna marry that girl. I'm Han Solo.
If I was Han Solo, I would 100% pick my future wife from just some lady I saw on TV.
You're like, I really like how she dances with that giant baby. Let's make this thing happen.
Well, there's a whole story about the baby that has nothing to even do with Ally McBeal. I found out that, yeah, you're right. It was one of the very first viral things that ever happened on the internet. And it really just started as a 3D rendered animation that this company made as they were testing out some new software. And that the animation framework that they had a bunch of different skins, like a baby one and a bunch of different ones. And for some reason, the baby one got sent out and released and started getting remade. And it was basically already viral on the internet before it even hit Ally McBeal.
See, there you go. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I know a guy who came up with a giant dancing baby. And what's funny is they didn't make any money off of that, I assume.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's weird. We've come so far when it comes to emails. I remember it used to drive my dad nuts because he would get emailed jokes. Back in the day, you used to fax people jokes. And it wasn't like a prank. It was, here are the top 5 fax jokes today. And you would fax them out to people nonstop. And they'd be like, this is not business. This is just clogging up the machine. And so then when emails came, people started sending out these joke emails where it's like, you got to hear this one. And thank God we've gotten better about using email. So we're no longer getting these things.
JJ, we're recording this episode on July 1st, but this will get released on the 5th, which is right after July 4th. So we're recording this before the 4th of July. You're all hearing it after the 4th of July. But JJ, do you got any 4th of July plans?
This year I'm actually going to be in a big city for the 4th of July. I'm going to make my way down to the Minneapolis area, and I'm going to go sailing on a sailboat on Saturday.
Ooh.
Yep, I'm very excited about that. And this will be my first trip post heavy part of the pandemic to a major city where I can get things I can't normally get at home. For example, I will be stopping at a place in St. Paul's called Cassetta's. Cassetta's is an Italian market and as well as a restaurant. And they sell all these great Italian meats and cheeses and pastas. And you can get pepperoni by the stick. I am over the moon excited about this trek.
Getting some pepperoni sticks, huh?
Pepperoni sticks are friggin' amazing, man.
Yeah, I mean, pepperoni is just awesome in general. Pepperoni is my favorite cured meat.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if I've got one, but I'm assuming it would probably be pepperoni.
Make it pepperoni. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
What do you have to lose?
What am I waiting for? Why can't I commit? Pepperoni it is.
I mean, is admitting that pepperoni is your favorite cured meat really shameful at all?
Well, it just makes it seem like I'm a Johnny come lately, like I'm just trying to copy you.
Well, that's fine. I'm a good person to copy, JJ. That's not a bad idea.
Let's count to 3 and say somebody who we emulate in our daily lives.
Hold on 1 second here. Let me just think of who I'm going to say. Are we saying 1, 2, 3, speak?
Yep.
Are
you ready? Hurry up.
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. Benicio del Toro. I'm just kidding.
I am too.
See, that's why we're such a good team. Anything to make each other laugh a little bit like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to my lake cabin at some point. A lot of family's going to be there. I'm looking to get a little bit of fishing done if I can help it. But now
you fish and you actually scale them and eat them, don't you?
I do clean them. I don't scale them like where people run the knife up and down the skin to actually remove the scales, because I'm actually filleting them. So the skin is fully coming off the piece of meat. But yeah, if I have a good catch and then I feel up to it, I'll clean them. I'll always clean them that day, obviously. And then if I'm not going to cook them, I'll freeze them. But I'll usually just cook them the very next day.
Do you guys have a fish house at your lake where you go into to do the gutting and the skinning and stuff like that?
We did. It is now since gone. We had this little teeny tiny shack. This, basically just it was spiders lived in there most of the year, and then we'd go in there a couple times a year to clean fish. And it had a little simple water pump and stuff in there. And we can't rebuild one or build a better one because of just the sort of zoning stuff, and that particular building got grandfathered in and blah blah blah. That thing no longer exists. It basically rotted away, and we just tore the rest of it down. But we have a long-standing practice of, if you want, you can take the fish straight up to the kitchen and clean them right there, as long as you follow a real good procedure. You clean up after yourself. You do it right. But my grandmother, all the time, we just bring the fish up to her, and she would just start cleaning them right there on the counter with a bunch of newspaper, and some tools you're going to need to do it. And then any of the guts, we would just double wrap in a garbage bag and freeze it so that it would at least keep for a little bit. And then when we would go back into town after a weekend at the lakes, if you made fish guts, it was your job to take them with you and dispose of them in like an actual garbage bin somewhere. And so, but I mean, there is nothing like freshly caught, fried up fish, for me at least. Some sunnies and some bass. I love it.
I'll tell you what's better than that. Eating fish that I bought at a store where I don't have to touch the guts.
I'm actually surprised I can do it, because I think it's because I grew up watching it happen all the time. But versus I never hunted. I've never shot a gun or an arrow at a living creature. And I've never taken part in field dressing or anything like that. And I'm not really interested in it. But I grew up loving to fish. And so as a child, I'd fish all the time. But then the adults would take care of the cleaning. But then when I became an adult, I realized, well, I can't rely on them for that forever. If I want fishing to be something that I can do at this level for the rest of my life, I am going to have to learn this part of it as well.
Yeah. And
if I ever have kids, I'll clean their fish for them. And if they want to learn, I'll teach them the ways that my grandmother taught my mother, who taught me. And so it's sort of like tied in for that. But I also keep fish. I have some pet fish. One of my goldfish is just under 10 inches in length. So he's got about as much meat on him as some of the sunnies that are large enough to carve up that you pull out of a lake. And it's weird for me to look at him and go, I know how to clean this guy if I needed to. I'm never going to. I would never. I don't think I'd be able to jump the emotional chasm of, I've had this fish for how many years, and after he dies, I'm not gonna eat him. But it is a weird psychological disconnect where I'm able to go through that process with fish that I've caught at the lakes.
Yeah.
But outside of that, no, couldn't do it. But also, I never eat fish outside of that. I never go and buy fish at a restaurant or buy it at a store. I never want it. I really only like it, or I'm really only anticipating it when it's within this context.
To me, like I can never be a hunter, right? Like the idea of field dressing a deer or something like that, I just can't do it. I love venison, and I'm really grateful when someone gives me some. I'll gladly give them some of my pickles. So it's not like I just want to reap the benefits and not have any of the hard work, but I just can't do it. I cannot do it. It weirds me out. It grosses me out. We even are the people that, like, if we catch a mouse in the house and it dies on like a trap or something like that, Jill's got to be the one to take care of it. I just can't do it. And this last summer, between my two dogs, they ended up with like 4 baby rabbit kills.
Oh, that's sad.
And so I buried 2 of them, and like having to pick up a lifeless bunny in my like with a shovel is not something I want to do on the regular basis. And given there are people out there in the world who are meant to deal with the tragedy of death in that way. So here's an example. At one point, our dog Neely stuck its head into essentially like a series of bushes at my in-laws, and she kind of rustled around, and then she pulled out, and she had a baby bunny in her mouth that she had already punctured. And so the bunny was probably going to die no matter what. And I watched so it's writhing in pain, and I watched my father-in-law essentially just like stamp it, like put his boot down and kill it when it was a mercy kill. And I'm still sitting here going, oh my God, 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 oh my God. And I'm just not that person. I'm great in certain situations, but when it comes to the death of an animal, oof.
Yeah, incredibly painful which is so weird to me because, like you said, I'm also a meat eater. I love the taste of meat, and I have no moral quandary with against hunting or anything like that. But there is definitely this weird conflict in my fight or flight response when it comes to the death of animals, depending on the context and the situation, right? Like I can watch someone hunt an animal and not have a problem with it. But if I see a dog or a cat get hurt, it fills me with rage, and I react more viscerally to the torture and deaths of pets than I do to people. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because of how I view animals and how innocent they are and how helpless they are, and how, especially these ones that we've effectively created ourselves, dogs and cats as they exist right now in our homes is not how they existed in the wild when we first domesticated them. So I feel like we have this extra level of responsibility, but then of course that's the same for cows and cattle and anything else that we've domesticated in some way. So if anything, it's like I'm a meat eater, but I want my chicken to look as little like chicken as possible. I want it to be fried in strips, right? I want it covered in batter and plenty of dips to put it in so that it feels like, no, this was just created just like this. That's all it was.
I'm going to pose a question to you, Tucker, and I don't want you to answer it until the next time we have an episode, okay?
Okay.
If I died tomorrow and I put in my will that I would like part of my meat to be prepared and served to people at my funeral, not in a tricksy way, and they'll be like, this is a meat sauce pasta and the meatballs. These are JJ balls.
You really think it's going to take me a week to think about my answer to whatever you're about to ask?
I just want to pose a question like, would you even bother to try it? And the reason I want you to think about it is I also want the listeners to think about it a little bit too. Because let me put it this way. If you automatically say, no, absolutely not, I'm like, well, you're kind of hypocritical because we are just another meat-bearing animal in the same way. Name an animal on this planet that in some way, shape, or form somebody does not eat. People eat snakes. People used to eat whale blubber. I mean, any animal on the planet, people at one point have had to turn into some sort of a meal.
Feel free to label me a hypocrite all day long for flat out giving you my answer now
Okay.
about whether or not I would eat my dead friend. And the answer is no.
Why not?
I wouldn't. Because it's you. I'd be too emotionally attached. And it's also human. If let's say if it wasn't even you, if someone said, hey, this is human meat, I'd say, I'm not interested. Thank you. The psychological impact I believe it would have on me would be devastating. I think I would just be retching all the time and feeling guilt and all this other stuff. And I think if anything, it would affect me really poorly in a mental health way. And if definitely not if it's you. Are you kidding me?
You're at a dinner party and there's like 40 people around a table and they announce that this is the next course is going to be it's a delightfully done in a curry sauce human meat, which is very similar to pork.
The answer is no.
And
the answer is
and
no.
literally everyone around there going,
I cannot imagine a single detail you're going to add to this story that's going to make me suddenly go, you know what? Maybe
not even just a bite, not even just a nibble.
Too quickly. JJ, no. Like, call me a hypocrite. Go for it, man. Like, I'll take that label. I'm a hypocrite, everybody. I'm not eating human.
At all, no matter what. What if it comes down to you and I get into a car accident and no one knows where we're going?
What words do you think are gonna be convincing?
And I'm like,
let's see.
Tucker, I'm dying. I'm gonna die. I want you to eat me so that you can survive.
I would tell you yes to make you feel happy until you died, and then I would absolutely not honor your dying wish. I would 100% lie to your face as you died and then not eat a piece of you afterwards, and I wouldn't feel at all bad about it. I mean, I would feel bad that you died.
I'd be like, Tucker.
I would not feel bad that I hadn't eaten a piece of you. In fact, I would bring it up if I was one of the people eulogizing you. I'd be like, just so you all know, let me just get this out there in case he put this in a will and it becomes part of TMZ or something. He asked me to eat a piece of him, and I told him I was going to, and then didn't after he died. I assume all of you here are cool with that. And the entire funeral is going to say, yes, Tucker, we are cool with that. And then I would continue on.
They'll be like, but he's been marinating himself in teriyaki sauce every night for the last year in anticipation.
You want to ruin all food for me?
Tucker, I want to nourish you. Have you seen the actual stage musical of Little Shop of Horrors, right?
Yes.
So that's the whole point. At one point, Seymour comes in and finds the plant eating Audrey. Audrey 2 is eating Audrey, and he pulls her from the clutches, and she tells him to actually go feed her to the plant so it can be big and strong, and that way she'll be a part of the plant. And so when he washes the leaves and gives it water, like, she'll be a part of what that is. Tucker, I want to be a part of you until you digest me and pass me through your bowels.
You know, man, if you want to be a part of me, just leave me some money in your will. How about that?
What about this? What if they took my ashes and made me into a drink?
God damn it. Why? You know what? How about this? It won't matter because you won't be here. So yeah, I'll do that, JJ.
Okay. It's also going to involve like a night in a haunted house for all of my money.
Sounds good, buddy. I 100% without question will honor your final wishes.
Dude, that's gross. Why would you do something like that?
Why would? Oh my God. I just, ugh. I'm going to have to take a little bit of time after this recording now to get this image out of my mind.
I see you staring at my cheeks all the time, which is usually the most tender part of an animal. So that's why I ask.
I'm looking for signs of heart disease. I just, oftentimes I'm the only person in the room with you, and I want to make sure that I'm taking care of you. And if anything happens, that I'm going to be the first to get on the ball.
That's why you're asking me to wear this oxometer all the time. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. That's why I always purse my lips when you order that third Pepsi, Diet Pepsi at Applebee's.
I'll say this. We'll end this episode with saying, like, there are cattle in Japan who eat virtually the same diet I do, and by the pound, people are paying a lot of money. So I kind of feel like, I'd be pretty tasty.
I think those cows have had less exercise than you.
Yeah. And so that's why I plan on scooting around everywhere. I bought fancy wheels for my desk chair, so I have to get up even less. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Here's what I don't understand. McDuck Manor, and he's Scrooge McDuck, but do they eat at a McDonald's at all?